Hi, how are you?
Hi, Kifa. I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for talking with me today. I'd love if you could introduce yourself and excited to get started on our topic today.
Sure. My name is Nuzi Barkatally. I currently work at Silicon Valley Bank. I've been at the bank for about a little over 2.5 years, coming up on three. And I cover a lot of our early stage banking, fund stuff, working with founders, within mostly a lot of healthcare, but also tech. My background is having worked at startups. I've mostly worked at healthcare startups. I also have a master's of research in healthcare and design with a focus on the ethical implications of AI in healthcare. And yeah, I've been an operator for many years before I kind of made my way into banking.
Amazing. So you are the right person to talk to about, exactly what we're going to talk about today, which is funding for startups, for digital health companies, life science companies. There's a lot of innovation happening with entrepreneurs, and one of the biggest things that a company has to think about is their funding and how to go about that. So Silicon Valley Banking is quite unique in the way that they help startups. And I had the pleasure of talking to you about it, but anybody that's listening, what does Silicon Valley banking do differently than other banks, and how can they help entrepreneurs that are interested in funding?
Yeah. Well, SVB has been around for many years supporting the innovation economy. We've been doing this for 40 years. And now we're under the great leadership of First Citizens. We're, a division of First Citizens now. But what we do is supporting startups from inception all the way through their growth stages and hopefully onto an exit or an IPO or an acquisition. And the way in which we do that, I think, is our sweet sauce and how we support founders. We know what it's like as you're scaling, as you're getting investment and funding, and at every stage, we have different products and services that support you. At the early stages, the stages that I work, it's a lot of, we have like the actual banking stuff, but we have people like me who can get you plugged in and get you connected. And that's kind of where we really drive that value add within the network and ecosystem. We do deck reviews and all that kind of stuff. Once you raise your Series A, depending on who your investors are, that's the opportunity where we can discuss venture debt. And venture debt is really unique to startups. Obviously, a lot of startups are not revenue generating, but we're able to provide debt based on who your investors are, the likelihood of you to scale and grow your company with more investment and VC funding. And I think that's kind of what's unique. And along the way, you have more people like me that support you as you grow. So
That's amazing. I love, working with you and as an entrepreneur and also as a healthcare attorney, there's a lot of things to think about, especially for clients that don't necessarily have the banking background and they're starting their ventures. A lot of times you'll see scientists or
yes,
want to, go in industry. They have a product they really want to get out on the market. And so they're not really sure where to begin. And I like to kind of consider funding in three different ways, which is grants or non-dilutive funding and then dilutive funding, obviously. And then, we can break it down a little further. There's grants, angel investors, and VCs. But what would be your suggestion or advice to people that don't even know where to begin? And, you know,
yeah.
this great idea. They are most likely a professional trying to, or an entrepreneur trying to get something on the market. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're building. If you're able to get grants and you know how to write grants or you know somebody who can write grants for you, that's a great path. The more kind of if you can do some of that non-dilutive, that's absolutely great. However, there's always a case for thinking about multiple sources of investment. And I think with VC funding, it's really about how you plan on scaling your business and the way in which you need to do that. And I think if you are planning to go that route, which not every startup or business will want to go that route, and I think that's okay. There comes an understanding of how you want to scale in that way. And taking VC funding often means you're trying to scale, really quickly. And that could be towards the technology that you're building, whether it's like AI or some other technology. It could be the way in which you're trying to, go through FDA regulation and clinical trials if you have a really clear understanding of, your go-to market after that and the reimbursement strategy around that. You might need that VC funding to kind of get through that. So I think it's really thinking about, what's your path to scaling and how you're able to do that. There's a case for different types of funding. And I think angels are also really great too. If you can find angels that are interested in what you're building and that kind of align with that.
Those are all really good points. So I guess the next question is, when would a company want to deal with VCs? What would be the appropriate time? Because sometimes a company will say, "Hey, look, we've talked to VCs, we're way too early, they don't have any interest in us." So what would you say to those people? What's the right timing? How to approach it? And there's a little bit of fear too, because when you're dealing now, you are dealing with other people that are financing your company. You
Mhm.
control. This is typically people's babies that they've been working on for so long, and they don't really necessarily know who to, I guess the terminology is who to go to bed with, meaning who are they going
Yeah.
to, etc. So the right person,
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. I think that those are really hard questions. The market is tough right now. It's not easy. And I mean, I think seed early stage is a little bit better. It's like I feel like it's doing okay relatively to a lot of some of the growth stage companies. But when you're thinking about whether you should take VC funding, it is something to not think about lightly. Like, there's taking capital does come at a cost. It's going to come at a cost to like having, those investors be with you along the ride. And so you want to choose investors that really understand your vision and that you feel good with, and they're gonna, help you drive a lot of the decisions that you're making as you scale and as you grow. So you want really good partners. You want to be married to investors that believe in you and that you believe in them and their support. Um, and I mean, I think like if you're struggling to raise VC money, I think that's where you can, it's time to kind of get creative. Either think about, is the market you're going after the right market? The way you're thinking about the company, is this the right direction? Can you pivot in any way? Is there something that you're not seeing that, could be helpful to understand or to kind of get in front of VCs with? And if that's not the case, if you're like, I really believe in this, I really believe in what I'm doing, and I'm still not getting VC funding, it is a long game, but you might have to find ways to generate revenue. You might have to look at other sources of capital, whether that's non-dilutive or look at, try to see if you can get in front of angels. I think being a founder is about like being scrappy and trying to figure out like how do I work myself out of this situation and having that self-awareness to know when you need to change things up.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's also exactly what you mentioned, getting scrappy with it, trying to find out which ways might best is the best interest of the company. And with that being said, there's also different things like accelerators, incubators. I believe you also have a background as well, experience with those type of programs. could you shed a little bit of light on that and when people should try to apply for them? What do accelerators and incubators provide for those that don't even know they exist? All that fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been a Techstars mentor for many years and mentored some of the early classes with Cedars-Sinai, which was our healthcare accelerator. And so a lot of companies like go through that. And I think accelerators can be good. I think it's very dependent on a couple of things. Like, you want to really look at like, is this actually going to accelerate my business? Am I going to learn from the mentors here? Am I going to learn from the MD who's running the accelerator? I think, depending on who the managing director or the person running the accelerator is, that can really support you, or you know, it can like an accelerator has the potential to take away from what you're working on because you're putting so much time into the accelerator. So I think it's really looking at, which people are actually going to help me. And I think accelerators can be so great for companies at the early stage. If you're able to find one that's specific to what you're working on, that has the knowledge base and the network that can really help you.
No, that's, I think it's really wise for companies to consider, whether that program is good for them and
Yeah.
responsibilities are during the program, and
Yes.
as well to any other future investor or even the program itself. Sometimes there's a little bit of equity,
Yes.
distributed with that. But so in terms of the AI in general and the changing investments and priorities, when you guys are taking on a client, what do you look for um, for onboarding, or what do you say about those kind of things to entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we work with all sorts of startups that, I mean, mainly, it's the ones that are looking to raise VC funding. And so I think that's where we can be the best support. We're not like a regular bank that supports kind of small businesses, although we have First Citizens for that now. But yeah, it's really like startups that are trying to go after VC funding. So we're not, I like to say that we're kind of like Switzerland. Like we're not a VC, we're not, we can be with you as you navigate those conversations. We don't we want to support all startups that are kind of building in that space and that are trying to scale and grow. And we want to be with them along for that ride. But the best part about what we do is being able to kind of share with founders, hey, look, I met this really great investor. I think you guys would be a really great fit. Or, here's like, these partners, and whether it might be like law firms, accounting, whatever you might need, like, here's a directory of people that we can kind of support you with. But we can give some direction, but we're not there. We're not investors. I think we're not there to kind of say like, hey, look, this is the right direction of your business or not. But we can look at your pitch deck and be like, hey, look, I think you're talking about the right things. Here's some ways to like think about that even more. So yeah.
Awesome. And I know that there are a lot of events that Silicon Valley Banking is involved with. Is there anything coming up this year, slash any projects coming up? I know that it is beneficial, and I would advise anybody watching this that is an entrepreneur or has a business to attend these events, because not only do you get to meet amazing people like yourself, but also other investors, other business people, other competitors, colleagues, all types of people. So it's always good to show up to them. But anything lined up this year?
Yeah, so I mean, we have events in every city, the cities that we're in. So, I'm in LA, we have a team in SF and in New York, and we're always like working on events. With it being March and like Women's History Month, like we are working on a women's health report that's coming out. It's going to come out in April. But we're very excited about that. We're going to have a bunch of events coincide with the launch of that report. So, I'll be having one early April. There will be another one in SF at the end of March. And yeah, we have some in New York as well. So we're very excited about that. And excited to share that as it comes to fruition.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And I think that the last question will leave open for people to think about is that there are administrative changes that have been happening. Is there anything that you've noticed with the landscape or things to be aware of for people? Because, sometimes as an attorney, I also have to think about this. There's a lot of regulatory or policy changes that can affect different things, regulation, FDA trials, uh, different programs for funding for grants. Anything that you have to say about that particular area?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a tough time right now, not really knowing kind of what that means for a lot of startups. I will say that there's like always something going on for startups like as they're building, like you don't know if like things are going to change with regulation and that could like potentially make or break your company. But I think right now particularly like there's an increased awareness around particular companies. And I think with the NIH, if you are getting funding from the NIH right now is like a tricky time to know if that funding is going to continue. And that's tough to like really understand. So yeah, I mean, I think the hope is that a lot of these startups that are reliant on that kind of funding are able to kind of work through it and hopefully it continues or hopefully they're able to get funding in other sources.
Yeah, to that point, diversifying all of where you can get funding,
Yeah.
getting being scrappy, all of those different things. Whether it's fundraising through different events, even there's certain, I believe, platforms too that companies can, set up almost like a corporate GoFundMe kind of thing in order to get
Mhm.
some all types of stuff. But I know that at least what's been on my radar is there's certain regulatory changes or talks, I would say, that women's health programs sometimes have been associated with DEI. And so as
Yeah.
those changes come about, we can see changes with women's health funding, potentially, just things to keep aware of for different femtech companies, for medtech,
Yeah.
digital, but it's always good to keep up with those type of things as well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like women's health funding has not received, even in research, hasn't received as much funding. And yeah, I mean, hopefully we can kind of like stay strong and push through a lot of what companies are working on to make sure that they get the research, the funding that they need.
Absolutely. And I do think that with AI, a lot of companies are now in a good situation to have bargaining
Mm,
to get that. So hopefully with this new femtech, race, etc., all of that, we will have more innovative tools on the market. But I just want to thank you for your time and I appreciate talking to you. I know you're very busy, but I would love to, have this for professionals, but also people in the public because they don't get to sometimes have access to amazing minds like yourself and where to start. So any kind of resources is always helpful. Knowledge, I always say, is power. So I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
yeah. Thanks, Akifa.
Absolutely.